Hello and welcome everyone to our third show from COP28 here in Dubai. Today we'll be focusing on technology, all the new developments business and governments need to get behind to fight climate change. Joining me now is Octopus Energy CEO and founder Greg Jackson. Greg, great to have you with us. Thanks a lot. I mean, you know, you've probably heard this a lot from people here at COP, but it's very hard to get away from your company because there are massive pink billboards everywhere. There are big pink turbines everywhere. I mean, it's a show of force, but I guess it's part of your expansion into the Middle East as well, right?
Yeah, also this is a global gathering, and you know, everywhere in the world we need the same thing to tackle climate change, which is electrification. And so I think our message here is the quicker we electrify, the quicker we can reduce the damage energy does.
Yeah. How big a part of the solution do you think is Octopus? How do you characterize that to people?
Octopus, I mean, we're only 8 years old, but we set out with this mission that we can bring the technologies that make decarbonisation cheaper and faster everywhere in the world. It's the same kind of process that maybe happened 100 years ago with the companies that are now the global oil majors. We now need to see the global electricity majors.
Yeah. Is there enough, do you think there's enough talk about tech at this COP? I mean, clearly, you know, we've had the carbon capture people, the air capture people. I'm doing a panel on hydrogen in a minute. Is there enough really teeth in the issue talk about tech?
Yeah, look, the reality is, people get very obsessed by big tech, the stuff you wear a hard hat for, like nuclear fusion or big hydrogen plants. Yeah. But in the same way that the tech that revolutionized our lives day to day was digital. You know, Uber wasn't self-driving cars. Yeah. It was just incredible data to optimize and provide a service. And energy is the same. So in electricity, what we need to do is have the digital technologies that can grab all of the green electricity when it's abundant and cheap, when it's sunny and windy, and enable us to use more of it at those times, so we don't have as much problem the other times. It's optimization.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned Uber, because I think you compared your global AI platform, Kraken it's called, isn't it? You compared that to Uber.
Yeah, it does the same job.
It does the same job.
So in real time, Uber matches the supply and demand for drivers and passengers by using price signals and data. And that's what Kraken does. In real time, we find the best place for people to be using electricity. For example, what's the best time to charge an electric car? You get home, you plug your car in, we'll just work that out. But in return, you can charge your car for 3 or 4 times less money.
Who else is doing, you know, when you walk around here in COP, who else is doing what Octopus is doing?
I think what you see some really interesting companies on the edge of this system. So for example, there's a company called Bbox who provides pay-as-you-go solar panels to people in Africa. Over 1 million homes in Rwanda now have that, helping break the cycle of poverty.
Do people, but no one's doing exactly what you're doing.
I think we were the first company to really say, by using AI and big data, we can match supply and demand and make renewables dramatically cheaper. And we need that to unlock it.
And what do you make of, just to finish up with, what do you make of the fact that this is that there is clearly a lot of focus, rightly or wrongly, on the fossil fuel industry? The president, of course, is head of the fossil fuel company here in Dubai. Is enough being said to the fossil fuel companies? We heard Al Gore yesterday coming down really hard on Al Jaber and Dubai. Is enough being said in the right way to the fossil fuel companies?
I'm just not even that bothered about the fossil fuel companies.
Okay.
Like, it's like when they built Amazon, Bezos wasn't talking to the bookshop, you know, retailers, just set out building the best product for his customers. And in the same way, look, those of us who want to electrify, to bring cheap, clean energy, we don't need to talk to fossil fuels. We need to beat them.
Yeah. Very quickly, what other tech, apart from yours, excites you most?
Yeah, look, I mean, heat pumps. I've got to say, for any country that gets cold in winter, a heat pump turns 1 unit of energy into 3 or 4 units of heat. Nothing comes close.
Okay, Greg, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
So we've looked at tech in the energy industry. What about further along the chain? How are companies trying to innovate, to fight, to address climate change? I sat down with IKEA CEO Jesper Broden to talk about where climate tech and business meet. Jesper, good to see you again. Is there enough innovation out there, Jesper, to scale to fix this problem?
The simple answer is yes. We have today enough innovations, and I actually think there's enough money in the system for us to be able to resolve climate change. Then you can say we are obviously eager to see new innovations, to see breakthroughs, to be able to speed up and to add to the solutions. But the answer is yes.
You've just announced another $1 billion for innovation and transformation. In that release, you talk about ambitious projects in the pipeline. What are these projects, and are they new projects, or are we talking about scaling up existing stuff?
Well, I would say it's probably three buckets here. One is what's already happening. The renewable energy transformation it's actually, in our sense, it's already happened. So we have today 160% already invested. When it comes to mobility, electric vehicles is happening. There are still a lot of needs in a lot of cities and countries to speed up the infrastructure to get that right, but it's ongoing. The big thing that we are engaging right now is circularity.
Yeah.
So we need to, in order to resolve consumption, we need to make sure we stop using virgin material like we did in the last century.
We talked about this in Davos, I remember,
Yes.
at the beginning of this year. Give me, very quickly, give me an example, the best example you've got of how this works.
Yeah. Well, one of the coolest examples, and it also points at the deep need for collaboration between private and public sector. So in Netherlands, we are basically now set up a structure to take back mattresses. Now, we would not be able to do that unless the government removed subsidies from incineration. But we are now actually in IKEA, we've set up 4 small factories to actually take back mattresses and make new material of it. Not only IKEA's market share, we actually take back every mattress in Netherlands, and we are now scaling that out in Europe.
Wow, okay.
That's a quite cool one.
You know, you've been vocal.
And it's
on,
good business, I have to say.
It's good business
Yes.
as well. Okay, you've been very vocal on fossil fuels. I'd be keen to get your views on CCS, carbon capture, energy storage, grid infrastructure, hydrogen. What about these technologies?
Well, I would say the way I approach it is to never allow ourselves to make future innovations an excuse for not acting today. As we said before, we have enough innovation to scale to solve the problem. We are curious about hydrogen. There is still a lot of things to be done to scale it economically. It's going to take a couple of years, but we believe it's going to come, not at least in mobility for heavy transport and so forth. When it comes to the carbon storage, I'm not the expert on the area. We are good in one thing, and that's planting trees. So the analog old way of doing it is what we're engaging in right now.
But if you had, final question, if you had to put IKEA's money on one technology, what would it be?
Renewable energy. Still.
Okay, but which part of that in terms
I would
of the
say,
technology?
first of all, wind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Jesper, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, how can companies track their impact on the planet? Joining me now is Donna Lindsay, Sustainability Lead at Ordnance Survey. Donna, nice to see you. Thanks for coming in. Now, people know Ordnance Survey for their maps. Tell us what you're doing and how you're doing it to fight climate change. I know it's about carbon offsetting.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. What we've recognised, that obviously Ordnance Survey have been mapping the UK now for over 200 years.
Yeah.
We do it really, really well. We underpin billions of pounds worth of economic value in the UK. But actually what we've recognised is that there's quite a gap between people really understanding what's actually on the ground and how they can invest in it for nature. So what we've been trying to do at Ordnance Survey is to bring our knowledge of how to do location really well into those investment pieces. So we've been working with Natural England in the UK on a highly degraded peat bog to really see how we can do high integrity carbon credits, because there's huge concerns in the market, as you'll be well aware, in terms of greenwashing and junk credits. How do we avoid that? We do that by really understanding what is there and actually then doing the proper monitoring and reporting to generate those credits.
And what you're talking about is, you mentioned the integrity piece. This is all about getting integrity and trust back into the market. The Guardian did a big piece that showed, well, that worried a lot of people. But how does this sort of, what you call geospatial data actually show what's on the ground? How does it illustrate that?
Well, this is where space comes in as well. So in the UK, we're really lucky because we have a lot of really good surveyors on the ground. We fly with aircraft, we do all sorts of stuff, but also space is a component too. And actually globally, if we can actually show where an asset is on the ground or a nature-based restoration program is on the ground, we can objectively monitor that through space. So I'm also vice chair of an entity called Space for Climate, where we actually flow the intelligence from space all the way through to the end of the supply chain. But actually, making sure that we can be objective, authoritative about that data is really, really important. And that's where location is a key anchor to demonstrate actually what is going on this site. Who's checking that? And if we as Ordnance Survey with our government backing, with our authoritative nature, can say, actually we can objectively say this is going in the right direction or not, that's really important.
Of course, just to play devil's advocate for a moment, there are those people who say carbon offsetting is a fig leaf for companies. And at the end of the day, we want to get beyond that. Would you agree with that? This is just a sort of temporary, or maybe temporary for 100 years, but project.
Well, yeah, 100 years, absolutely. But we have to do these things. And actually, in terms of things like technological advances for carbon, sequestration and things like that, quite a long way off. But nature can do so much, and we need to get these investment pieces into nature to enable those restoration projects to really deliver that carbon sequestration. So I think whilst people say it might be a fig leaf, actually it's really, really important, not just in terms of removing carbon, like peatlands can absorb a hell of a lot of carbon, but actually we need to support nature as well. So making sure that these two things go hand in hand, whilst we're trying to resolve the carbon crisis as well, it's so fundamental we can't ignore it.
Very quickly, to finish up with, what other data and what other data projects here have you seen that excites you in the ways they might be able to help reduce emissions? There's
some really exciting stuff going on. So I'm here with the UK Space Agency. They've got a real mission around methane. So they're looking at how do we create an international program for detecting methane from space, so that we can actually try and reduce the methane emissions, which is really important, as you know. But also some of these other things in terms of making sure that we've got in space calibration. It's very technical, but basically what that does is it makes sure we know that the data is accurate. So all of these sort of things are really important to actually do that global piece around that trust and authoritative data.
Donna, thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much.
From geospatial mapping to literally sucking carbon out of our atmosphere, there's been a lot of hype around these sorts of technologies. How effective are they really? I spoke to Climeworks CEO Christoph Gierbald to find out. Let's start very quickly for the uninitiated. What is direct air capture? Because it's not CCS, it's not carbon capture and storage.
Direct air capture is not CCS, exactly. Direct air capture is building machines. Think of it as boxes, 40-foot shipping containers with ventilators, pulling in air from the atmosphere and filtering the CO2 contained in atmospheric air from it. So essentially, we stream air through our boxes, the CO2 sticks inside the boxes, and then we remove it again as a pure gas, pump it in the ground and store it there. That's direct air capture.
As an idea, I get that. So, but again, for the layperson, let's talk about scaling something like this to solve the problem that we have. How many of these boxes do you need to suck all the carbon out of the air above the state of Louisiana, where I know one of the facilities is?
We're talking about roughly 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 of such facilities. We're building a facility with a capacity of pulling 1 million tons of CO2 from the air per year in the state of Louisiana in the United States. And scaling that and achieving climate targets would mean we need roughly 1,000 or 2,000 of them spread around the globe to achieve climate targets, or the removal target of pulling 2-3 billion tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere per year.
Okay, so 2,000 of these, 1 to 2,000 you need around the globe. How much does one of them cost?
One is in the range of $1 to $2 billion of investment.
So 1 to 2 trillion would be the cost.
Exactly.
If we were going to get all of these 1,000 to 2,000 in place. How likely is that?
That's highly likely. The energy transition will cost us like a 5 to 8 trillion per annum. So there's room for a technology like direct air capture in there to finance this journey and get to the billion tons required.
And what sort of feedback are you getting from the policy side, the global banks, the private sector, when you throw out numbers like that?
Well, it's obviously very heterogeneous. There are a couple of countries who are very strongly behind it. For example, the United States, with the Department of Energy and the Inflation Reduction Act, both of them having programs especially dedicated to direct air capture. So a lot is happening there. Much less is happening in other countries, right? So it's not evenly spread out around the globe, but it's good. We have some pioneers, and with the United States, we can start to build our first large-scale plants.
And what do you say to those people? Because of course the fossil fuel industry is once again front and center here. Phasing out rather than phasing down fossil fuels. What do you say to those people who say that this sort of technology is being used by those companies as a fig leaf almost, like much as a company might offset as well?
Economically, there is no such thing as a fig leaf. Like we're currently operating in the high $100s per ton of carbon removal. We'll go down to $500 by end of this decade in a nutshell, and maybe we'll reach $200 in the long run. Now at $400 per ton, you're adding roughly, like a barrel of oil would cost you $120 more, right, than it's today. So there's no such thing as a fig leaf. You only want to use direct air capture in instances where you absolutely have no other chance to decarbonize, right? And this is what our technology is meant to avoid, to address unavoidable emissions, where you have, like, technically no other chance, and where it's also economically feasible, right?
Final question: if you had to put your money on a time when it has been scaled and is at a scale that it's really making a difference, when would that be?
Well, a couple of thousand tons save one human life, right? We can argue.
Right. Yeah.
Does that make sense? This is a scale where we're operating already today. Yeah. So I do argue every molecule you're pulling out of the air counts. We're pulling several thousand tons today. We're pulling 1 million tons by end of this decade. And again, a couple of thousand tons saves one person's life, and that's meaningful.
Of course. Christoph, thank you very much indeed. That is it for show 3 from us here at COP28. Do check out Reuters.com for the other shows in the series, including our COP Explainer and a look at climate finance and justice. I'm Axel Threlfall in Dubai.